In this video, I'm going to be tackling a bunch of fixes and features which can together only be classified as miscellaneous items. Okay, there are a bunch of miscellaneous items that I want to implement in our inbox application. Note that this application is far from done. There are a whole lot of features involved in a typical messaging application. For example, the listing page would need to have checkboxes and the ability to run bulk actions on them. We have created the infrastructure for user folders, but we haven't provided the ability to create new folders or the ability to move messages between folders. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. And of course, as they say, the devil is in the details. There are a lot of minor things which is going to take up a lot of time. The thing is, though, building all of those small things doesn't make for good viewing on a Code With Me series, right? You're going to get bored really quick. So I'm going to tell you what are the things that you could do, like I did just now, but then I'm going to stop at some point. I want to make sure I cover some of the important things, at least in my mind, which are kind of low-hanging fruit that I want to implement before I hand off the code to you to kind of pick it up and run with, all right? So there are a few things that I want to implement, starting with, if you open the inbox page, you see this guy here, hello, name. Well, why don't we give it the user's name? That'd be a good thing to implement, wouldn't it? So I'm going to go here and I can get the user's name in the controller and pass it to the model. The way to do that is to go to the inbox controller. I have, I'm getting the login, right? Principal.getAttribute of login is going to give the login ID. Principal.getAttribute of name is going to give the user's name. We have demoed this when we tried setting up our Spring Boot application with GitHub OAuth, okay? So I'm going to just create that. I'm going to say principal.getAttribute of name. I'm going to put that into a model attribute, all right? So I'm going to say model.addAttribute. Username is going to be principal.getAttribute of name. Okay. Once I have this, I'm going to copy this to all the other controllers as well. Okay. It should go to the email view controller because we need to provide that at the top, right? The greeting at the top. Below default folders, I'm going to paste this guy. And I'm also going to paste this, the compose controller, just below the default folder. Now that this is there, I can go to the templates. Again, you can componentize this if you want, just the part where I'm showing the name. And let's see if there is a good Bootstrap component for kind of showing a nice UI. I have this thing in typography. I'm just going to do this. I don't want to overcomplicate this. I'm going to have in the header, I'm going to put this display heading and then the muted text. All right, so I'm going to call this inbox app. And then here with the muted text, I'm going to call this th:\text. The name is username. All right. Okay. I don't know if this is a block element. Let's see if I put another one here, does it stay in the same line or does it go to the new line? I'm going to write welcome. And then I have this. Okay, this is good enough. I'm going to try and, okay, this one's a container. I'm going to add a little bit of padding to each one of these so that the app isn't kind of flush at the top. So I'm going to do a margin top, maybe 20 pixels. Okay, that is better. So I'm going to copy this and put it to all of the templates so that there is a little bit of margin at the top. Otherwise, it looks a little too congested. And then on the compose page. And of course, I'm going to have to copy the header into all of those 3 pages. Again, this is a good opportunity for creating a component. So if you're interested, give it a shot. Okay, so now we have the header kind of remaining the same, and then you have all these different things which allow you to kind of navigate among them. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time styling because that's going to be, it's a huge time sink. And again, the focus is not on the UI side of things, the focus is more on the backend. There are a couple of backend related loose ends that I want to tie up as well. Okay, the first one, which I realized, is if you open the email view controller, okay, over here, we are validating if the email exists when you're looking it up, right? Somebody wants to see an email, we're validating if the email exists, but we're not validating if the user is actually allowed to see this email, okay? If I have the email, the UUID for a certain email, I can type it and view it, whether the email was sent to me or not, okay? So we need to do some kind of a validation. So the validation would be if the email was sent by that person who is currently logged in, or if it is one of the recipients, okay? If it's one of those people who is currently logged in, then they can see the email. Otherwise, they're not allowed to see the email. We have to have that check in place. Otherwise, anybody can see any email as long as they have the ID. What I'm going to do here is implement the check. I cannot check ahead of getting the email. So once I get the email, and once I'm going to add the 2 IDs, I'm going to perform a check. Check if the user is allowed to see the email. What does allowed mean? The user, the login ID, which is the user ID, has to be the from or has to be in one of the 2s, okay? So I'm going to say if user ID dot equals email dot from or the 2 items contains the user ID. Okay, user ID is one of the people that the email has been sent to, in which case you can continue. Otherwise, you're going to have to quit. Okay, so let me actually do the opposite here. If not, from and not email.getTo contains user ID, well, this is an error, and I'm again going to redirect them to the inbox page. Okay, this means that they're clearly trying to hack the system. I don't want to bother with error messages. I'm just going to show them the inbox page. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. And I will test this with going to the inbox app.java, and I'm going to create a new email where I'm neither the sender nor the receiver, so that I can try accessing it and see if it works. Okay, so this is an email from ABC that is going to DEF and ABC. Okay, and of course there's no I here. I'm going to remove this. So I'm going to try sending an email from someone to someone else. Now I'm going to try accessing that email, and I want to make sure that I'm unable to load that email. Okay, that's the goal. So reload this. All right, I'm going to go to the email, select star from messages by ID, and I should have, this is the one, right? The ABC one. I'm going to copy this ID here, and I'm going to try accessing it. it shouldn't let me. Okay, so let me go over here and then change the ID to this guy. Will I get an error? That's interesting. Folder.label. It's because I'm redirecting to the inbox page, probably without setting the model. All right, so let's see what I'm doing here. I'm going to go to the email view controller. So what I'm going to do is, rather than return the inbox page, I'm going to redirect /. Okay, so I'm redirecting to the root URL. So what's going to happen then is, instead of setting all the model here, it is going to go to the inbox page controller, and it's going to set, it's going to execute that controller, which is going to set the model. So I don't have to kind of play catch up over here. So let's restart the server and try this again. Okay, I'm here. I open an email again that I'm allowed to see, and I'm going to query and get an email that I'm not allowed to see, which is this ID. And let me paste this and see what happens. I'm gonna paste this, and it's going to kick me back to the inbox page, which is what I want. Okay, so the reason this is better is because now that I'm doing a redirect, it's calling another controller method. I don't have to set all those things in the model myself. If I'm redirecting, if I'm rendering a template, I need to make sure I'm putting everything necessary for the template to render, and I don't want to bother with it. Just kick them out to the other controller and have that handle it. Okay, so this makes it a little secure. Only people who are allowed to see the email can see it. All right, one other thing I'm going to do is put a proper login page. If you go to the index.html, where are you? Over here. All right, this looks really bad. Okay, so I'm going to make this look a little nicer, and again, I'm going to take the help of Bootstrap. Actually, let me take the help of my other code base where I created the login page for better reads. I'm going to copy paste that thing here. Hey, I'm copying from my code, so that's okay. Let me open this up on GitHub, and here is my index.html. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy the whole thing, main, and stick this into my index.html. It should literally be the same because I'm doing a GitHub login even there, all right? And I'm going to copy the styling here as well. I'm going to put this in the head. Okay, and I'm going to change the name of the app. This is called Inbox App, and the tagline is stay in touch with your GitHub. Outside GitHub, that seems like a good excuse for an app. You want to message people on GitHub, but you don't want to message them on GitHub. All right, now I'm going to try this out. I'm going to create a new private window, and I'm going to try localhost 8080. Not what I had in mind. It's probably because I don't have the Bootstrap styling. Okay, let me put the Bootstrap styling here. All right. I think I don't need the JavaScript, so I'm just going to paste the CSS. Don't think I need the JavaScript here. I'm not doing anything JavaScripty. Okay, that's better. I click on this, and it is going to ask me to log in via GitHub, which is what I want. All right. So now I have fixed the sign-in page as well. Okay, so I'm going to commit this. I'm going to call this secure message from unauthorized access, and these are all the files except for index. Okay, so I'm going to commit all of them. And then the index one is make the login page look better, which is this guy. One other thing I want to do, and let's see, this should be fairly simple to do, is when you do a reply, what we see right now is basically an empty everything. Okay, so here is my the page itself. Okay, so I have the from, to, all that stuff. I do a reply, the to is populated, but nothing else is populated. It'll be nice to have these values in here, right? So let me try doing that. I'm going to populate when the reply happens. Now, when does the reply happen? The reply happens when the compose controller loads. Okay, the compose controller is going to load the draft page, which is basically the form where people can type their emails. Well, if this happens to be a reply, I want to fetch that information and display this. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the UUID for the email as a query param here as well. Okay, so if you go to the email view controller, I am doing here, I'm checking here, find by ID, right? I need to do this in my compose controller, because what I need to do is get the email that is being replied to, and then get the subject, get the body, and then put them there so that it acts as a continuation of that thread. Okay, so let me actually first start with getting the ID in the reply and the reply all button. Okay, so when somebody clicks on reply all, it has to send that the UUID for that message as a query param. All right, let me go to the email view page. Okay, so that's where if somebody is viewing an email page. Now, when you click reply, you're doing this, right? Compose to email to equals email.from, and then I'm going to add one more plus ampersand ID equals, and then I'm going to stick in the ID email.id. Okay, so the ID is also going as a query param. I'm going to do this for the reply all as well. Okay, so the ID is going as an additional query param. So when I do reply or reply all, I made a mistake in the template. Probably missing a plus or something like that. There's an additional curly here, which is the problem. All right. Okay, so when I hover over, I don't know if you can see this. You in the bottom over here, you can see that the ID is being passed in. So if I click on reply, you see this, the ID of that email is getting passed in. So what I'm going to do is use that to fetch the email in the compose controller. In the compose controller, I'm going to have to fetch that email. So this is going to be very similar to, let me close the others. This is going to be very similar to the email view controller in the sense that I'm going to have to get the ID like this. Okay, so I'm going to copy. It's not going to be a path variable here. In this case, it's going to be a query param. It's going to be a request param. Request param, it's going to be required equals false, because not always will it be a reply. Fix the imports. All right. And once I have the ID, I'm going to have to fetch it, which is this logic. We've got the unique 2 IDs here, so I may not be messing around with the 2 IDs. Now I need to get the email repository, and I need to check if that email is present. If the email is not present, what do I need to do? I probably don't need to do much. I can probably ignore the ID, right? Somebody's trying to reply to an ID and that ID doesn't exist. We can still show them the form and have them type the message. We don't have to load that, right? We cannot load that, but at least we can give them an email page that they can type and submit in. All right, I'm gonna go get the email repository from here. Copy and paste this here. And I'm trying to fetch the ID. If the optional email is present, then I'm going to do this stuff. Okay. And not only do I do this, I also have to check if the user is authorized to see the email, because what you're doing is by replying to an email, you're kind of assuming that you have access to the email and you can see it. Because if you were to show the subject, for example, they're going to have access to the subject, even though they don't have access to the email if we allow this, right? We need to make sure that if the user is trying to reply to a message, they have access to the message in the first place. So I'm going to have to do that check here as well, which leads me to believe that this is probably a good thing to take out and move to the email service. All right, I'm going to go to the email service because there are multiple places using it. So this would be a good thing to put over here. All right, I'm going to create a public does have access. This is going to be a Boolean. This is to check if a certain user has access to a certain email, and then string user ID. Okay. For this email, does this user have access? And what this is going to do is it's going to check if the user ID is in the from or the user ID is one of the twos. Okay, so I'm going to say if, basically I'm going to do a return user ID equals from or email.get2.contains of this user ID. Okay, now I can call this instead of having to do this every time. All right, so once I do this in my email view controller, I'm going to do email service. Oh, I don't have email service here. Well, that's simple to fix. I can inject it. Email service dot does have email access, email and the user ID. Okay, if not, email service dot does have email access, then I'm going to redirect over here. Okay, that means that they are not allowed to see this email. So this was the functionality that we already had. I've refactored it out into an email service. Okay, but in my compose controller, what I'm going to do is I'm trying to reply to an email, which is why I get the ID. I'm checking if that email is present. If the email is present, I'm going to get the email, and then I'm going to check if that email is accessible by this user, right? So if the email does have access, then I need to set a couple of properties that populate the form. Okay, I need to set a property for the subject, and I need to set and the model attribute. I need to set a model attribute for the subject, and I need to set a model attribute for the body. Okay, so I'm going to do model dot add attribute subject is going to be, what I do here is Again, these are methods for the email service. This would be a good method for the email service. I'm going to create a method here. It says public string get reply subject. String subject, right? Given a subject, what is the reply supposed to be? Okay, I'm going to return re plus subject. Why am I doing this in the email service? I don't know. Maybe this will be useful somewhere else, but you can put this here if you want. It's not a big deal. Email service dot get reply subject of email dot get subject. Okay. It's always a judgment call in terms of what functionality goes into the controller versus what goes into the service. When it is something UI specific, I'm more confident in putting it in the controller. But if it is not specific to the UI, but it is needed for the UI to be rendered, I kind of lean towards, okay, let's put this in the service. The reason I'm putting this in the service, if it was just subject, I would have probably put the RE here and added it here. I'm also going to need the body, and the body is a little more involved, which is why I want to move this to the service and create something similar, right? Get reply body. Okay, now what is the body going to be? Get reply body. This is a little more involved. Okay, so I'm going to send the email itself. And this is going to return a string, which is what should be in the body. Now, what this is going to contain is probably like a line, and then who sent the message to whom, and then the message body itself. So you can kind of read the chain as you go, right? I'm not going to spend too much time perfecting it, but I want to put something basic in there, all right? So I'm going to return maybe this dash here. I'm hard coding all this stuff, so feel free to change this. A new line, and then I'm going to say from email.get from. Another new line. I don't know if the new line works. The /n, I don't know if it's going to create a new line in the text area. We will find out. All right. And then 2 is going to be email.get to. I'm fine with it showing the square bracket that it does over here, right? And then I'm going to have 2 new lines here, and then I'm going to email.get body. Okay, so it is going to show this block when somebody clicks reply. Okay, and I want this to have like a couple of new lines in the top, so I'm going to do this, 2 new lines at the top, and then 1 more new line after the dash. Okay, so it's kind of spaced out. Okay, so I'm going to get that, and I'm going to put this on the body. Okay, email.getReply body, and I'm going to have to pass in the email itself. Okay, so I'm creating these 2 things to pre-populate the form with, if it's available. Otherwise, I'm not doing that. Okay, now I can go to my compose page.html, and where I'm printing the form, I can add the th value here, right? So here you see this is the subject. I'm going to put th:\value equals subject, and then the body is going to be body. I have no idea how this is going to work, so we will see. All right, so I'm going to go to inbox. Here is my email. I click reply. Okay, so I get the subject as the RE, but nothing is showing up in the body. Actually, I think this is th:\text. For text box, to pre-populate the value, you use th:\value. For text area, th:\value doesn't work. You got to use th:\text. Okay, so let's give it a try. I've loaded the page. I'm going to open a message. Click on reply. Okay, so I have the subject here, and I have this stuff. Okay, doesn't look great, but you get the idea, right? So you have, let's say I say test message here. Hello, 1, 2, 3. Testing, and then my signature, and I'm going to submit. There's an email for myself. Now here's my message. I'm going to open it, and now here I have all this stuff. The /n doesn't work over here, so I'm going to have to fix that. So you click on reply. All right, here it is. So I'm getting the kind of like the chain of messaging over here. This one is probably not a good new line to have. Immediately after the dash, I would like this from to show up. And then maybe one more line before rather than after, right? So I'm going to quickly fix that. I'm going to go to the email service and add one more before and remove one after. Okay, so that's taken care of. Now the display for the email doesn't account for new lines. Okay, let's fix that. I'm going to go to the email page.html and the part which has the body. I'm going to put a class called body text, and I'm going to style it to allow for line breaks, which are the new line character, right? So I'm going to say body dash text. There is this CSS property called white space, and this has a bunch of options, pre and pre-wrap. Okay, what pre does is it accounts for the /n as well as the br tags, and it also wraps text if it's exceeding. So I quite like this. I think that this would be perfect for what we're trying to do, right? So I'm going to try this again. Okay, I should open this email, reply. I have a bunch of new lines, submit. I get the new email, and here is those things broken down as well. I'm going to try one more, test 2, and then submit this. And now I have the new email with those lines broken down. So this seems to be working fine. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap up at this point. I have done some basic functionalities for kind of tweaking some missing pieces that was kind of nagging me. So again, there's a lot more you can do with this. What I'm going to do is commit this change. Okay, I'm going to say add threads to reply functionality. Okay, so that's the part that we just did. But yeah, like I said, this is just the beginning. There's so much more functionalities that go into a messaging app, and I don't want to be building all of that. You're going to get bored. I'm going to get bored. What I'm going to do is let you actually build it yourself. You don't want to watch me build this stuff. You should do it and take this further. So what I'm going to do is in the next video, we will do a wrap up where I'm going to highlight some of the things that you can implement as next steps. This is the state of the code that I'm going to leave this repository with, at least with that commit that I just did. Play with this, and I'm going to give you some ideas for what to implement next in the next video. So I'll see you there.